Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 49 of A Series of Death. Knowing the house belonged to a hunter gave it a different sense. It was no longer where someone lived, it was where someone operated from. That this hunter, this Nikal, he had trouble not thinking of him as Halgarinam, still had moved into his territory near his house, unsettled him. Nearly a year ago, Marlot hadn't received lost IDs yet. As far as he knew, the hunter hadn't killed his first predator until months later. Was the closeness a coincidence? Had he already planned on involving Marlot? Nikal said he tried not to kill. Had he already known he wouldn't be able to suppress the urge? It scared Marlot how little he could make sense of the male still. At least, he was now confident he and Trembor had nothing to do with the motivation to kill. It had come long before their problems occurred, and as far as he could work out, even if the hunter had watched them from afar, it wasn't until they broke up that he'd taken an interest in their relationship. The house was still as empty as it had been when Marlot came to look at the body. He purposely refused to think of it as having been Gorak. That male didn't deserve to be acknowledged anymore. Now, though, the emptiness made a little more sense. Nikal was meticulous, and no matter how much time he'd spent here, Marlot was certain that any time he left, he made sure no evidence of his presence remained. Had the protector made Nikal the hunter he was, or had he joined them, hoping it would be an environment where his need to kill could be harnessed? He didn't know if he'd ever find out. Nikal hadn't been forthcoming on his past. Marlot didn't expect that to change. He returned to the kitchen after the walk around. It hadn't told him anything new, so now it was time for a more in-depth look. The enforcers had looked around too, but they had been looking for clues as to who the killer was, not who Nikal, a hunter, was. The cooler was empty, no grains, no vegetables of any kind. Had there ever been some? Or had Nikal cleaned it out after the body, knowing he wasn't returning here? One plate in the cupboard, one glass, one set of utensils, all immaculate. The one clashing element was the table and chairs. They were old, dented, and clawed. Something Marlot expected had been picked up from the curb. An element of pure practicality among the neatness of the house. Other than being old and used, the set was cleaned. The living room was empty as well. The carpet had indentation where furniture had been, but it was matted so flat it could have been the previous occupants. The walls they weren't an exact match in color to the hall, which matched the kitchen. Moving closer, you could make out the scent of paint. Something recent enough to still cling to the surface, despite the air circulation system running as strong until it was turned off after the body was found. Definitely not a year old. He ran a hand over the wall. Why would Nickel bother repainting a living room he didn't use? Leaning against it, leaning against it, he took his pad and went over the enforcer report, searching for out of the ordinary, and came up with something that could explain the paint. A neighbor had seen drywall by the entrance a little more than a week ago, so repairs. He looked at the room. Why wouldn't the Cal wait close to a year to fix something? Had it finally bothered him? Only Marlo didn't get the sense the hair would have endured something wrong for long without doing something about it. So the reason had been recent. He checked the timing before when he'd received the body's ID, unless the neighbors was off the scent about when he'd seen the drywall. The only thing Marlo could come up with was damage caused by a fight. Though the one fight he knew about had happened here. The one fight he knew had happened here was in the bedroom. There was no visual evidence of one, but the drywall indicated wall repairs. To be sure, he walked around the house again, sniffing each wall, and only the living room had the faint scent of fresh paint. He placed his pad against the wall and turned its light on. He'd seen one of the RIs do this during the hunt for Ruxel. They'd found where they thought he'd hid, and a wall had been repainted. The light had caused the inconsistent shadows where the wall had been patched up. There had been old repairs, but one had been to cover up a cache of items from the victim. That find had been what had finally put them on close to the hunter's trail and his end. Here, Nickel had repainted the entire room, possibly to further hide the work. But Marlot found places where the wall had been repaired. He marked the shapes. Most were small, smaller than his fist, large enough to be a hare's fist, possibly. But why would Nicole strike the wall? If he understood one thing about the hare, he was controlled. He didn't even scream when Marlot tried to anger him. No, that was wrong. No, that's wrong, he whispered. Nickel had been agitated by his attempt to get Marlot and Trembor to talk. Things hadn't gone as he'd wanted. In a way, Nickel had lost control. Could this be another manifestation of that event? Only he'd been calm again before he vanished, leaving only a pad for Marlot to find. Something in that conversation had let the hare find control again. Purpose? Marlot didn't exactly recall what he'd said. Not long after that, he'd received the body's ID. Though he hadn't realized it, his interaction with the lion had led to his realization of why Trembor reacted the way he did. The hunter had given him the key to fixing his relationship with Trembor. What did it say about Trembor that it took a hunter's intervention for him to understand his mate better? One patch was a straight line, a rectangle. The one place that wasn't what Marlot was thinking of as the hare striking the wall. He used the claw to score the shape in the paint, then dug deeper until he was halfway through the dry wall. He broke an upper corner and carefully pulled the rest out. Behind it, on a crossbeam, rested a picture of a young raccoon, quite young. If he was of Predation age, he'd just had a birthday. It was a printout, and next to it was a newsy article, also printed, about the deplorable underage death of a raccoon at the end of a predator. No names were mentioned to protect the family and raise the odds the perpetrator would have his time in court. There was an air of reverence to how the picture and article were arranged, but Marlot couldn't understand why Nickel would have this. Why would he care about this one death, underage or not? A search on the network told them when it occurred, a little more than a week ago. So it lined up with being the reason for the repairs, the damage, the anger. But why wouldn't Nickel be angry about this? He's crazy. Marlot told the room, only it was the simple answer. Hunters were insane, the research agreed, but Nickel felt more in control. He looked at all the marks he'd made where the hare had punched a wall. Usually insane. He filed the article as something to investigate once he was done with the house. He found himself back in the room where the body had been found, the only other evidence of anger on Nickel's part. But this one, Marlot felt he understood, now that he knew why the hunter had put him on the body's scent. There had been no intent on Nickel's part for Marlot to become interested in the lion. The hare probably hadn't expected the lion to pursue him. It was clear now that interpersonal relationships were not something Nickel understood well. The hare had followed the lion, possibly to see if Marlot got the message, or maybe just because the lion was going to die no matter what. He'd sent the ID to Marlot. The pattern was set. Nickel had to kill him. The one exception to the pattern, he realized, was Trembor. Nickel had sent Marlot the ID and made a point of saying that even if the circumstances were unusual, they would do. Had the death of the rhinoceros been how the hare was able to not kill Trembor? Here, he'd killed this lion because he had put Marlot's relationship with Trembor in danger. Marlot was giving in. He'd lost hope of ever getting his lion back with his lion, and even understanding this one was a difficult male, Marlot would have taken him because at that point, the wolf would eventually have said yes to just about anyone just to chase the pain away. So here he was with still more questions than answers in this house where Nickel had lived, where Nickel would know he'd come back as soon as Marlot worked out he lived there. The sense of the house changed again and his hackle rose. The hare had wanted him to come back. He'd wanted Marlot to return and see what? The living room? If so, why had the body been left here in the one room other than the kitchen with furniture? Searched the bed, pulling off the mattress, looking for cuts that had been sewn closed or something taped under the box spring. Nothing. Short of clawing them open, it contained nothing. He pulled the drawers open. They were also empty. He cursed, frowned, then pulled the second one open again. In the front left corner was a blood stain. He knew he'd checked the dresser when he'd been there the first time. Had that been there? He went back to the enforcer report until he found the one about the bedroom. He found the piece of dresser, the drawer, this drawer. There was no stain. None of the drawers had stains. No one other than the enforcer would have been in this house since the body was found. There was a lock on each door to ensure that, but Marlot knew how easily those were to bypass. How easy those were to bypass. It could be some random person breaking into the house and rummaging for something, maybe some souvenir of a crime that had been committed. Sure, Marlot said sarcastically, pulling the drawer out, and by the time this is over, Nical's name will be on my mating contract instead of Trembor's. This was Nical. The bastard had returned and left a message for Marlot. Checking the drawer revealed there was a compartment there. But after searching for a few minutes on how to open it, he had to break the underside to access it. In it, he found folders, 16 of them, each a pair of people in them. Many of the same species, but not all. Some males and female pairs, but there were 3 female pairs and 1 male pair that unsettled them. They were couples, but he realized on reading the second folder's name, Pollock and Braden Yellow Eyes, both wolves. Wolves are strong on settling on one family name to represent their mating. His mother had taken the Blackclaw name on mating with his father. He'd considered taking Golden Mane even before they were mated, but he didn't have a mane, so he decided to wait and see if Trembor would bring it up. So couples, most of which Nical most of which Nical at least killed one partner. Why? A quick read didn't tell him, and he didn't have the time to read through all of them. He found the names of the victims he knew of, and 4 he didn't know. A search of on the Yellow Eyes brought up the breaking of their mating contract, along with Pollock's death. Unclaimed body, almost a year old. Well, at least I know you didn't start this with me in mind, he whispered. The 2 folders at 4 still alive, and he looked the first one more carefully. Arbine Thunderhoof, female bison, in a relationship with Dalial Curvedhorn, female antelope. Pictures of them together at a restaurant, of them dancing at a club, arguing, this picture through the window of a house. Quite the stalker for a prey species, Nical, but it didn't tell him why he had them marked as potential target. The last folder was the one that bothered him the most, his and Trembor's. Like the others, there were pictures, including some in Low Valley. Now that he knew Nical was a hare, not noticing among the prey population there made more sense. There were more pictures than though any of the other couples. Something about them had interested the hare. Mixed with them were articles about Roxel's capture, the part Marlot played in it, a vital one if they were to be believed. You are smarter than to believe anything you read, Nical, so why me? He pulled a picture of him and Trembor, soaked in blood, resting against a tree. The coyote's remains weren't visible, but Marlot remembered that day, that meal, that moment, one of the last truly happy times he had. You had no business spying on us. Gorek's picture surprised him, but once he was over that surprise, the rest didn't. Hospital files with Trembor's name on them. He looked through each and every injury that lion had gave to his, and again, it was a good thing that he was a body already. Knowing the extent of Trembor's suffering, Marlot couldn't imagine the strength it had taken Trembor to interact with other people again, to let anyone get close to him, to risk getting hurt like that. And Marlot had done just that. His pad buzzed, then beeped. He'd received a file. The picture appeared first, and Marlot was running out of the room. The hare had his lion tied to another chair, head held up by him grabbing a handful of mane. He searched the living room when he realized the mane was too golden to be Trembor's, but he didn't slow. The resemblance was there. It was one of his brothers. He had so many. Marlot couldn't tell which one. His pad buzzed. A text this time. I'm afraid our game has come to an end. The pieces are taking their place. If you won't end it, I will end them. It buzzed again. This time it was an address. Them. One was the brother, the other one had to be Trembor. He wanted to call the enforcers. He promised himself he would do this the right way, but the hare had made sure he couldn't. If he even suspected Marlot brought anyone else, he knew that lion was dead, and Trembor would never forgive him for playing a part in that. Nickel had just made sure Marlot would kill him, just like the hare wanted. And that concludes chapter 49 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, as well as the other books in the series, they are available at all major e-retailers. If you're looking for a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. on Twitch. The links are in the note. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.